Okay. Is it perfect? Okay, let's let him in. Thanks for doing all this as always. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm so sorry your video didn't go out.
Oh, it's fine. I just was concerned because then you don't get as many people in. Anyways, here they come. Hello, hello, everybody. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Why can I not see anyone? Oh, there we go.
Hi.
How are you all doing?
Great. How are you, Stephen?
Great, thank you. We've got people joining. Here they come. Hello, Scott. I can see you're in. How do I, you think I would know how to work Zoom by now. I still have no idea what's going on. Here we go. Ah, there we go. That's what I'm trying to do, just so I can see everyone coming in. Great. Welcome, everybody. Lovely to have you here. Are we on time? No, we're a minute late. That's my fault entirely, because I was almost late in joining this Zoom call. Oh, another Stephen. How exciting. If you want to put your cameras on, I would love that. There is absolutely no obligation to put it on, but I do warmly invite everyone to put it on because it's so much easier for me to see everybody. And I feel like we're a little community if we have our cameras on. I promise I won't pick on anyone, maybe, probably.
You're an equal opportunity picker-honor.
Absolutely. I find, like, especially with online, when everything started happening online, it takes so much time just to wait for volunteers. Whereas when I actually teach like classes in real life, I don't do volunteers. I'm like, yeah, go. But they're my students, so I'm allowed to do that.
I have a name for that. It's called forced fun or punishment.
I volunteer them for themselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, too much is taken up. Great. So I think we're all about here. Mark, do you want to say anything?
No, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody for attending. And thank you to Stephen for holding these classes. We're so, on behalf of Flute World, we're so excited that we get to partner with you, somebody of your level, your caliber, sharing your talents with us. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy Saturday, your performance schedule, and thank you to everyone that's attending. We're in for a treat.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Someone has just popped in the chat. What was it? Voluntelling?
Yes.
I love that. I heard a great music. I'm playing in the opera for the next few weeks, and we were in rehearsal last night, and it was the first rehearsal with the singers on the stage. Usually the orchestra does like 2 rehearsals first, and then the singers will be doing their thing. And then we come in and we do this thing called Sitzprobe or Wandelprobe, I think. And basically Sitzprobe means the singers are like on the stage, but not acting out. Wandelprobe, I think it's called, is where like they're kind of still in casual clothes and they don't use props, but they walk about and just make sure they're marking their spots. Anyway, we were doing our Wandelprobe last night, and the conductor turned around to the orchestra, and in general, like all opera, play quietly. That's the rule of opera. And he turned around to the orchestra and he said, "Orchestra, these sforzandos, I don't want them too loud." And the oboe player shouted out, "Mezzo sforzando," and that absolutely cracked me up. I thought that was so funny. Geeky music joke. Mezzo sforzando should be a thing. Anyway, just like volunteering. Great to have you guys here. I'm so excited. One of the things I love about these classes is that when Flute World and I first spoke about them, they said to me, you can do whatever you like, whatever you like. And for me, this is a really cool thing. So the first one we did some studies. The second one, actually the first 3 we did studies. The second one we did Mozart concerti. This one is all about Bach, as you know. Next one is going to be, I think, French flute repertoire, and then who knows what will happen after that. But I love playing the Bach sonatas. I really do. I think as a community of not just flute players, but now as musicians, and that ranges from young students through adult amateurs right through to the pro world, people are scared of playing not just Bach, but Baroque music in general. I have to be careful how I say Baroque, because here in the US, everybody says Baroque, which sounds very weird to me. And whenever I'm talking to my students and I say Baroque, they always giggle. So I will do my best to say Baroque, but it feels very unnatural to me to say it as a British person. But I went through a few years of not really playing Bach. Through my kind of early 30s, I stopped playing Bach because I felt like everyone was judging everyone all the time, and maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. Now I'm old and I don't care so much, and I play Bach all the time. I love it. In fact, in April, I'm going to do all 6 sonatas in one night. I'm very excited about doing this. I have not done that for about 10 years. I've only done it twice before. And I just think there's so much beauty in this music, but we do have to approach it in a slightly different way. And I say that with kind of no, like, loaded questions or loaded thoughts behind it. I really do believe that, because whether we like it or not, people are going to judge us. how we play this music. I know we're not supposed to say that out loud, but that is the nature of what we do. People listen to us, and as many people as are on our side, sometimes it's people not on our side. And I want to go into every performance, and I want my friends and my colleagues and my students to go into every performance confident in the decisions that they have made. So irrelevant of what someone else thinks about your performance of this music, you can get complete joy and satisfaction out of it. And that's what this is all about. So I know Mark has sent me a list of some people playing. Jocelyn, are you here? Give me a wave, or let's say something if you're here. How do I do this? Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm on the wrong view. That's why I can only see one person. Hang on. You think, honestly, I'm so terrible at Zoom. Why won't my view go? There we go.
I don't see a Jocelyn in the room.
Okay. Also, Brittany, is Brittany here? Brittany, fantastic. And Cheryl, I know Cheryl, she's not. Oh, Cheryl is here. She's just not got her camera on. Cheryl, are you there? You are here, but you're not saying anything. And Deborah.
Hi, Stephen. It's good to see you
Hi,
again.
Deborah. Thank you. Your picture says Roger.
I know, yeah.
I
I'm not the tech person in the family, so yeah, that's my
That's
better.
okay. I feel your sentiment there. So let me just see what everyone's playing. Jocelyn, you're going to play E major. Deborah, you're going to play A major. Amazing. Nobody plays that one. Cheryl, number 5 or number 6. So that's also E major, E minor. And then Brittany, E flat major. Great. So we're going to cover lots of things. Now, I have a little clip of Bach of me playing that I'd like to show you, not because I think it's the most perfect version of Bach. It's just a little moment taken from a live performance, but it will explain to my thoughts on this music. Now, I thought, should I show this at all? And if I do show it, should I show it at the beginning or the end? I'm going to show it now, but here's the thing. Even if it's amazingly different to how you guys play, I don't want you to change how you play for now, because then it gives us nothing to talk about. I want you to play exactly as you intended to play in terms of sound, ornamentation, vibrato, articulation, slurring, phrasing, everything. Don't change anything. This is a learning experience for all of us, including me. So here is my imperfect version of Bach. Oh my goodness, how do I do this? Share my desktop. Work. Oh no, hang on, that's not going to work already because I have to click the little box that says let you guys hear audio. There we go. Share sound. Optimize for video clip. I don't know what that does, but let's click it. Share. Oh no, don't do that. It's asking for a password. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Right. I quickly stuck the sheet music onto this little clip. I really hope it turns the pages at the right time, but I can't promise because I did it all so quick. Now I can't see any of you guys. This is very annoying. Zoom drives me nuts. Hang on. Okay, I don't know. I'm not going to see you while we play. So let's have a listen. It's about 2 minutes long. Firstly, can you hear it?
No.
No,
Oh,
sir.
Okay, let's do this again. Share screen. Share sound. Share. Oh, to install. Oh, it's not going to let me do it. Okay, abandoning that idea. I'm getting some weird password thing. Okay, we're not going to listen to me play Bach. We're going to go straight in. I will share this on YouTube or something if anyone's interested to see it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
Basically,
great.
I have strong opinions. Actually, what I'm going to do, Mark, is I'm going to send it to you and maybe you can share it from your end.
You got it. And we'll also post it, you guys, on the Flute World Facebook and Instagram, and it'll be on Stephen's page on our website as well.
Okay, Mark, I'm sending that to you on Facebook Messenger. It'll arrive any second. But until that arrives, who wants to go first? Jocelyn, you want to go first? Not Jocelyn, sorry, Deborah. Deborah, you want to go first? Since you're beside me on the box. Cool. So tell us what one you're going to play.
Okay, so I'm going to just switch the camera over here to my stand. Why don't we start at the beginning?
Yep, of which sonata?
Oh,
And
yeah,
then-
I'm doing the sonata number 3 in A major.
A major, perfect.
And then, Stephen, just FYI, you're still sharing your screen if you want to take that down and make.
Okay,
And-
there.
Sweet. And could you pin Deborah so that she becomes the highlight?
I sure can. Pin. There we go.
Okay.
I love that. Becomes the highlight. Feel very special when someone would say I was the highlight. Great. So have you performed this in front of anybody or have you ever played it?
I have not. I am getting ready to give a recital on April 24th.
Oh, amazing. That's
And this is
exciting.
part of my repertoire.
Cool. So why did you choose the A major?
Because, okay, complete transparency.
Oh yeah,
I
go for it.
hated playing Bach. I have dreaded playing Bach, and it was the shortest sonata. So,
Yeah, so it's for those of you who are not so familiar with this one, it's only 2 movements, if I remember right. Yeah.
no, it's 3, but the middle movement is very, very, very small.
Ah, my editions do not have a middle movement, but we'll talk about that in a second. What edition are you playing off?
I'm playing off the International.
Okay, let's go for it. So if
Okay.
everyone's got the sonatas there, pull them out, follow along. Your edition might be slightly different. If you don't have them, just quickly have a Google because they'll come up online. You can pull it up for free somewhere. Okay, let's do this, Deborah.
Okay.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So are you playing exactly what's on the page? Or are you making any changes yourself?
I am playing exactly what's on the page.
Okay, lesson number 1 about Bach. This is where I get very excited. Bach wrote very little on the page. This was very normal for the Baroque composers. They didn't add a huge amount of ornamentation. They didn't add a lot of slurs. They didn't add a lot of anything, to be honest. Later on, this annoyed Bach. And he started to be a lot more specific about what he wrote into his parts because he was listening to musicians play and he did not like the way they were adding their own embellishments and their own interpretation onto that. Sometimes he did, but remember, the majority of people were amateur flute players as they are now, and certainly not as educated as they are now because look at what the resources that we have available to us. So the standard nowadays of amateur players is very, very high. I'm not saying it wasn't back then, but it probably wasn't. We kind of think of them as being amazing back then, but I actually suspect quite the opposite. And we know that even up to Mozart's time, because do we know the story about Mozart writing his concerti and all the drama that went along with that? So I think we imagine everyone was amazing, but I really don't think it was like that at all. Also, they were playing a flute very different to ours, and we'll talk about that later maybe, but the intonation would have been weaker, the articulation would have been weaker. So I think the standard of playing nowadays is probably much higher. So Bach later on started to be a bit more specific. In this sonata, he was not specific at all. This is one of the earlier ones. It's only 3rd in the collection, if he even wrote all of them, but we're fairly confident he wrote this one. So you do have some flexibility, is perhaps the word, to add in a little bit of slurring here and there, a little bit of articulation, even a little bit of ornamentation. That's the first thing. The other thing is, if you don't have the music in front of you, this is written with vivace tempo, or vivace, as one of my students called it yesterday. And this gives us some information, but not a huge amount of information. The metronome was not invented by this point. It didn't get invented actually until after Beethoven died. So we're quite a lot before the metronome. So we have to think, what would the tempo have been? Now, this is where I get kind of really fascinated about Bach. Where do you think this music would have been played?
Okay, well, typically it would one of 2 places. So court music for a royal event, or the church.
The church. Okay, most likely the church for sure.
Yeah, and I would vote for this particular sonata. I would vote more for the court than.
What kind of acoustic do you think would be in these places?
Oh, in the court?
Or in the church?
Oh my goodness. So alive.
Yes,
So
very echoey. Now, we know, I'm sure you've all played in echoey churches. What happens when you play lots of fast stuff in echoey churches? It just gets muddled together. So often I look at Baroque music and I think this tempo would not work at the tempo we play it in because of the environment that they would have been playing it in back then. They didn't have the luxury of what composers have nowadays to actually mark a specific quarter note equals whatever. They had to come up with these general terms. And of course, the vivace is more than a tempo. It's a kind of style and an energy. So we have to find a way. This is just my opinion. I also forgot to add my disclaimer, which I say in every online or live masterclass I ever give. This is all my opinion. You are free to ignore every single thing I say. I'm really, give you my word, I will not go home to bed tonight and worry about it. Like if you turn around and say, there's a load of rubbish, I don't believe you. I love the fact we had the discussion and we'll leave it there. But this is just my opinion. So feel free to discard it. But it's a rule that I work with in my own playing. I talk to my students about it and has kind of got me through my career. So there is some value to it in that sense. But you have to make your own decisions. But I think the Vivace tempo is probably slower than what we think. But keeping an energy in the articulation and the phrasing. Because if we played it, all they would hear in the church, like noise. So we have to really keep that in mind. And it's such an interesting thing to think when we play this music all the way through the classical repertoire as well. Where was this played? Because the idea of going to a concert did not exist at this stage. Concert halls did not exist. Symphony orchestras, in the sense that we have them now as a kind of community symphony orchestra, it didn't exist. You're absolutely right. It was there for the court to please the elite and the rich and the royals, or it was there for religious reasons. And all this music exists because there was opportunities for it to be played in those places, mostly by amateur musicians. But the acoustic determines how we have to play it nowadays, at least to be authentic. Whether we want authentic, that's a personal question. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But I think it's probably a little on the fast side, because you're playing it with a 2023 Vivace.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go back to kind of 1700s Vivace. So let's take a little bit off the tempo, but more obvious in the phrasing.
Okay. Whoops, sorry.
No, hang on. I love this. Okay, bro.
Ran out of breath there.
Suddenly we've got this amazing sense of elegance, which we didn't have so much before. So whatever you're doing, I really love. I really love. Now, there's a few other things. We may not get past this section because this is a fast-paced class and there's other people to play, but I'm going to give you much more information. And again, you can take it. Now, to get even more elegance, I think we can do something with these eighth notes. If you look at the eighth note, it pops up a lot here. He could have written that as a quarter note. He could have written that as a 16th, but he chose an eighth note. And that kind of tells me something. We've got to present the eighth note in a slightly different way to the 16th. So if we play it without the eighth note, it still works perfectly. But then how do we bring the eighth note in to add something more beautiful? For me, it's almost like the little bow, before you meet the king or something like that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're in kind of modern days, we tend to see notes as long. But I don't think that's very Baroque, actually. I think there needs to be just the tiniest bit of separation, and the eighth note presents the 16th note. And this applies the whole way through. And then it's all this kind of almost, I want to say, royal effect. Yeah. So maybe this would have been more for the court, and it certainly has that kind of sound. Either way, I think the tempo and the way we present the eighth notes are going to be crucial in providing an authentic interpretation of the piece.
Okay. Not enough room.
Yes, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. When we play notes slightly shorter with a little separation, we often spend so much energy on the start of the note and we kind of forget about the end. I feel like you're doing that a little bit because we're getting bum, but what we really want is bum.
I see.
A nice tail, a nice tail. That's hard to do, of course. Good, very nice. Just do it one more time. Okay, excellent. Now, you're giving it a lovely tail, but what are you using to give it a lovely tail? I'll tell you.
Vibrato.
Yeah, your vibrato. Now, this opens a whole other can of worms that I was trying not to get into quite so early in this class. Do you have any idea about? Well, let me ask you this. That sounds very patronizing, and I didn't mean it like that.
Oh, no.
What is the purpose of vibrato?
It's to give life to the sound. It helps with your color. Um,
Yeah, for me, all of that comes under the umbrella of expression.
yes.
It's all under the umbrella of expression. Its existence is to give it expression. If it doesn't give expression, we have to reassess what we're doing. Now, the way flutists, flautists, flautists, whatever you want to call them, and musicians in general in Bach's time, the way they gave expression was different. They relied much less on vibrato and much more on articulation and ornamentation. Do you know what I mean by ornamentation?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, I would go as far as saying that vibrato comes under the concept of ornamentation in
Interesting.
the Baroque industry, excuse me, in the Baroque era. There's some great books. I mean, the most famous one is Quantz, you know, the book by Quantz. It's actually hilarious. Quantz, this book, I recommend everyone, it's literally called On Playing the Flute. Quantz was a really interesting guy. We think Bach and Quantz met. We're not certain. There's absolutely no foolproof evidence that they met. However, if you read the book, Quantz talks about Bach quite a bit. Um, Also, there was a particular period where Quantz, who originally, by the way, was an oboist, took a job in the orchestra in some German court. I forget which one it was now. I want to say Potsdam, but I could be wrong. Um, and while he was there, he met this flute player called Bufferdin, Gabriel Bufferdin, who was a French flute player who came across to Germany. Bufferdin was a massive virtuoso. We suspect, we don't know for sure, that Bach wrote the partita for Bufferdin. I actually did a lot of research, and this is part of my doctoral studies. One of the reasons being because a lot of it is in French. He gives a lot of French indication, and the same in the Suite in B minor, Overture. You know, it's in French, which highlights he was probably writing for a French person. The only French flute player we're really massively aware of near Bach at the time was Bufferdin. Bufferdin played the flute in the orchestra that Quantz was playing in, and Quantz thought he was so great, he asked Bufferdin for flute lessons and ended up switching to the flute. So there's this huge connection of Bach and Quantz through all of this stuff. I mean, I could go on for hours about it, but it's worth reading the book. It's very funny because Quantz later was then employed by Frederick the Great. This is the famous part of the story. So he left this orchestra, moved to Prussia, where Frederick the Great was the son of the king of Prussia, later to become king himself, and he had a horrible, horrible relationship with his father, like awful. So Quantz was kind of a bit of a father figure for Frederick the Great. But Frederick the Great was a terrible flute player. But Quantz was teaching him composition, writing loads of flute concertos and sonatas and hundreds of pieces for Frederick the Great. So when he wrote this book, he wrote it, we think, with a kind of focus of I can't say these things to my employer because he'll fire me, but I can write them in the book. So there's a lot of kind of like what's that word? Passive aggressiveness in the Quantz book. It's very funny. Honestly, you should read it. There's some hysterical moments talking about intonation and things that I genuinely laughed out loud when I read. They're worded so funny, but it's worth reading because he talks a lot about vibrato and how it really is more of a concept of ornamentation. So I would. Sorry, that was a very long way of getting to the point I'm making. I just love talking about this stuff. I would probably remove vibrato as a kind of general color and add it here and there to add spice.
Okay.
And I mean, if you play this, I don't want to say play it with no vibrato because that's a personal decision, but if you play it with no vibrato, it really does change the sound. So we go from, excuse me, I would argue it's more expressive without.
I like it.
Beautiful, so beautiful that I need to hear it again.
Thank you.
What I would say as well, Deborah, is remember you have lots of tools available to you.
Okay.
Length of note being a very important one. So do you want bum beep bop beep beep bop bop bum beep bop beep bop beep bum, or do you want bum beep bop beep beep bop bop bum beep bop beep bop beep bum? Very subtle difference, but changes how we receive it. Beautiful. Now I would say that is a great middle ground for you. And I mean that as a compliment,
I
not as
like
a
that a lot. Yeah.
because you were removing it, but the odd note, the harmony note just had a little bit of twinkle to it.
Yeah.
And I kind of think you would keep the purists happy and you would keep the modernists happy. And at the end of the day, you have to keep yourself happy. It takes a lot of courage to play in that. And there has been times where I have gone to play Bach and I kind of chickened out at the last second and not maybe being. There's a recording actually of me playing the Bach Partita, which I recorded during lockdown. I was scheduled, so many concerts were cancelled, and we were in this really heavy lockdown for a year in the UK. So some went online, and even that was a problem because you couldn't get into a concert hall to record it. I often wasn't allowed legally to stand in the room with my pianist to record, so I ended up doing a lot of solo rep. And I recorded the Bach Partita a couple of times, and there's one recording which annoys me because I can hear I was really thinking about it, but I just wasn't brave enough to quite go far enough with the sound I was making. So I don't want you to feel like that. I want you to feel really confident in your decisions. For me, this is very beautiful and elegant, and it's kind of happy. It sounds quite joyful
Yeah.
with that sound. And I think that's the approach to this music. We often think of Bach as two-dimensional, black and white, but I think it's massively colorful. Massively colorful. And before we move on to the next person, the other thing I just want to add, we're covering all the bases. In this first three lines, literally everything is covered. Trills.
Yes.
Trills are a very interesting moment in music in general, but especially in early music. What are they for?
What are they for? Oh
What
gosh,
are they
I've
for?
never.
Why did the composer bother writing a trill?
Um, I can think of two things. One, so like the first trill that appears, we're coming back to tonic. So to emphasize, we're
Like
in
a harmonic reason,
right,
definitely a
right.
possibility, but I think there's something even more powerful. We've already spoken about it actually. It falls under the same
So
realm.
so beauty, the
Yeah,
how it,
expression, expression.
yeah,
It's a gift. I always think as a player, especially in an orchestral sense, when you have a solo, like a flute solo in the orchestra, and there's a trill,
yeah.
it is your moment to show you're amazing. Forget all the fast notes, forget all the dynamic stuff. The trill is where people go, wow, you really can play. Because you can use it as like a bit of a superpower. I think every trill you play, unless there's a specific reason not to, should be the most expressive thing you've ever played in your life. And of course, with early music, as you're doing, we tend to start the note on the upper trill. Sorry, start the trill on the upper note.
Right.
The only exception being if the preceding note, the note before, is also the same. So in this one, for example, you have the first trill you have is a C sharp. The first note is a C sharp. The trill note is an A. Does that make any sense what I'm saying here? Let me say
Yes.
that whole
Mhm.
again. The trill is an A. The note before is a C sharp. So you're going to trill from a B to an A.
Right.
If the note before was not a C sharp, but it was in fact a B, you would then start on the A.
Okay.
Does that make
Okay.
sense? But rather than going,
Ah,
there's a beauty and expression in the lean, I think. Yeah, even more. So extend the B as long as you dare, so that because you're right when you say the harmony, which is the note that clashes the B.
yeah.
So keep that B going as long as you possibly can, just so everyone hears it. Yes, beautiful. Do it all together. Put the whole thing together. So thinking about the vibrato, the length of the eighth notes, the shaping, and then the tempo and the trill express. Oh my gosh, there's so much to do in just two lines.
And that's just the first three
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, bravo, fantastic. For me, this sounds like Bach. This really
It's a
sounds
lot more
like
fun to play.
I love it. So don't we should never be scared of this music. We just have to think of it. We just have to think about it and how are we approaching it. For me, I would love to sit through and listen to you play that sonata in a concert. It's going to be a blast. And don't be afraid to talk to the audience as well. I often talk to them about how I'm about to play Bach. I say, and I make a joke. I know there's loads of you here who are about to write your reviews, write your terrible review on how I play Bach. But I just want you to know I love this music, and I've thought deeply about why I'm playing it the way I am. So I don't care about any of your. I've said that to so many audiences before, and they all laugh. And usually the reviewer will be nice to me after, because I've had some bad reviews of how I play Bach. But it's something to think about. Don't be scared of music. Do it because it's such great music, and what a shame for us not to be playing it.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
coming to
much,
play for
Stephen.
us.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you,
Very
Flip
welcome.
World.
Okay, who have we got? Who's up next? This is a great time to comment. If anyone wants to say that they think I'm talking absolute rubbish, this is a good time. I'll argue with you though. Cheryl, you want to play? Cheryl, are you there? No? Who else is on my list? Brittany Primavera.
Yeah,
Spring.
yes, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, wrong Brittany. I'm sorry, there's two Brittany's. Brittany Artavia. Where are you calling from, Brittany?
I'm actually calling from Costa Rica.
Wow.
Oh, I have played in San Jose, Costa Rica before.
Oh,
Is it San Jose? That's just Costa Rica, right? I remember
yeah,
this.
that's the capital.
Yeah, I had such a good time. I only ever went once. And I remember landing in the airport and I was just going through. This is why I remember this. I cannot remember the concert, but I was going through the immigration line and I was really tired. I think I'd flown in from Los Angeles or somewhere, and then I'd flown from Australia to Los Angeles or somewhere before. So I was really tired and I was in such a miserable mood. And I was just going through immigration, and then like one of these bands came out. Do you know what I mean? Playing all the folk music, and everyone was like, "Yeah, having a great time in the immigration line." I was just standing there going, "Shut up!" I was so unhappy. That's my memory of San Jose. Anyway, what Bach are you going to play for us?
B flat major.
Great, Cheryl. Thank you. I just got your message. We'll work with Brittany first, and then we'll come to you.
That
next.
sounds great. That's great.
Thanks. Just pop yourself
I
back
just
on
got-
mute for me. Great. Sorry, Brittany. I didn't catch what you said. E major, you said?
E flat.
E flat, my favorite one. Great. Let's do it. We'll go from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is number 2, everybody, if you got the book. Beautiful. Fantastic. Fantastic. I love the little bit of ornamentation at the end. Of course, for those of you who are not familiar, this is not what is on the page. What is on the page is. You heard Brittany like make it all beautiful. And this is perfectly normal practice in this music to do. There are certain moments where we can and cannot ornament. Again, read the Quantz book. He has a whole bit about here's the ornamentations available to you, and here's how you stick them in. It is so literal and so matter of fact that you can't help but laugh because it's literally like Sudoku rather than actual music. This is literally how they would approach it. And I thought what you did was really beautiful. The easiest way to learn ornamentation, and this is actually why I was going to show you my little clip. It's because you can fill up the spaces with little notes between, essentially. So if you see a moment where you can pop a note between, do it. It's always a good way to do it. I thought it was so beautiful. I thought it had a lovely sense of elegance. I also loved your tempo for similar reasons to what we were talking about. But one other reason, and this is from experience of playing this, this has an awkward introduction for the keyboard. They have to play quite a lot of runs before you even play your first note. It sounds like it's going to be the most virtuosic piece on the planet, and then the flute comes in this like nice kind of stately thing. So if we set it at too fast a tempo, often it doesn't sound clear in the keyboard, especially if you're playing with the harpsichord player, because often I found the harpsichordists I work with are not harpsichordists, they're pianists, and they're just trying to do it. So you have to be a little sensitive to that. So this is one of the ones I would say learn from the accompaniment. I'm not big on learning from the accompaniment in Bach because Bach did not write these accompaniments. These are all realized by someone else. Bach wrote figured bass for most of these. Figured bass is an amazing thing, which I had to study a little bit in college and now I can't remember any of it. But basically, they put the numbers underneath the harmony changes, and that tells the player what intervals they have to play above the bass. So the bass line is written for them, and then it would have like a six and a five, and these all mean different inversions and different things, blah blah blah. And they literally would improvise the accompaniment. It's an amazing, amazing skill. Um, and it's certainly a skill that I do not have, and most of my piano playing friends don't have. Actually, the pianist who works for me does have it. He can do it, and we published a version of the Schmelzer Sonata, and he did it all from figured bass. Really, really. I mean, he's a genius, but let's not tell him that. So it's just worth knowing that the version you have is going to be very different in the accompaniment to the version another version because it's not Bach's accompaniment; it's an editor's accompaniment. Which edition are you playing, Brittany?
I think it's about a writer edition.
Baron Writer. Okay, how did you choose that version? That is a loaded question.
Well,
Did you choose it, or you just picked up the first one available?
no, I started seeing another one with my teacher, and then he said, "Oh,
Hmm.
those all articulations are all wrong," and then he gave me the word text, and then we end up
Right.
making our own version of it.
Good. That's what I think should be happening. There are three kinds of versions we can buy of music. I'm sorry if this is academic. I did not know this until about a year ago, and it really changed how I view Baroque and classical repertoire in particular. There are three versions, and they are kind of categorized by titles, which is a bit clumsy because they don't all quite fit in. But essentially, you've got original manuscript, you've got performance edition, and you've got scholarly edition. This is what they call them, and they're all different things. So, original manuscript is what it is. You know, like essentially, if there is a version that you can get of the composer's hand, there it is. With a lot of these sonatas, they're lost. We don't have them. The other problem we have, even if you do have them, is often they're so messy and illegible. It's quite hard to make out what the composer wanted. The good example for flute players is the B minor suite. If you go look at the Bach B minor suite, that does exist. Now, if you buy a copy of the B minor suite, actually, the partita as well exists. The partita is a really funny one because if you buy our partita, it's like 6 pages long. It's on like a page and a half in Bach's hand because it's so squashed, and you're like, what on earth is even? I can't even see where the second movement starts. It really takes you some time. It's on IMSLP. Go and have a look. It's quite amazing. Um, so that's the first issue we have. Second edition is called Performance Edition. That's where someone like me gets called by, Schirmer or Leduc or someone like that and say, hey, can you make an edition of the Bach sonatas? And I go through and I put all my slurring, all my articulation, all my trills, and then they sell it as the Bach sonatas. And then on a tiny little letter, it'll say edited by Stephen Clark or James Galway or whoever. James Galway's done a lot of them, including the Bach sonatas, as has Rampal. Um, loads of flute players have. I have never edited the Bach sonatas. I have edited the Mozart concerti though, but I'm a little reluctant to do it because it's just my opinion. It's not accurate, and I am not an academic in the true sense of the word. Um, so sometimes these performance editions are fantastic. If you're looking for a quick version that you can pull out the envelope once it's come in the mail and you can just walk on stage and play it tomorrow, go for it. Performance editions serve their purpose, but are they really true to the composer's intentions? Probably not. The third edition that you can buy is called a scholarly edition. These are harder to find. Well, they're not harder to find, but they're harder to tell because the idea behind the scholarly edition is where someone presents their evidence and research within the sheet music and then explains why they are making the decisions they are making. And the person who's done a fantastic edition of these is Bartold Kuijken, or Kujiken as it's spelled. He is a Dutch um, legend of the early period flutes and conductor. I mean, he really has thought about this. I have a great version of the partita again by him, and it's published by um, I think it is Shermer, you know. And in the back, he gives a whole load of information about how he came to the decisions he made about slurring, articulation, where he was researching, where he found copies in the library, all this stuff. So I kind of trust his version. You know, I trust that what he is telling me to do is probably quite accurate. And he even gives some hints about ornamentation. So these are the general categories. Urtext is a name you'll hear crop up a lot. That Urtext, um, which I think translates to mean one text. Is that right? Something like that. Like it. The idea behind it was that they were presenting you with the original manuscripts. They are not. They are absolutely not. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Urtext. The problem is there's so many mistakes in the original manuscript that if these publishers who even are claiming that they're doing original manuscripts, if they even tried to sell them to us, they wouldn't be that useful because there's so much rubbish in them. So they're still quite heavily edited. So we can't trust any of them, actually, is the answer. They're all kind of lying to us. Baron Writer is certainly a very good go-to option for people like us who want to play the music rather than write dissertations about it. I use a lot of Baron Writer. I'm not scared to make my own changes to them, but Baron Writer is a publisher who kind of bases their work off Urtext, but then usually has an editor involved as well. And the clue is when it says Urtext or original, and then there's an edited by, how does that, I don't know how that works, but often you'll see that. So you have to kind of think about your edition of Bach, Handel, Mozart, all this stuff. When the composer has been dead for such a long time, music has been Chinese whispered, as I call it, you know, over and over. We have to be a little careful about what edition we're playing. So I like what you did. I was that's why I'm curious because I couldn't figure out what I know these editions, a lot of them, and I couldn't figure out what one you were playing from. So it makes sense that you have done your own thing. I love your articulation. I love the way you're doing like one articulated note, three slurred a lot of the time. I think this works really well. I do think there's a little opportunity for for more ornamentation in here. Very simple things like if we look at measure, what is that, 20? I go just before it where you have the repeated B, sorry, 9 key. Really simple little thing like that. But it suddenly changes the mood rather than having or whatever you want to do. Just, you know, and it comes back. One of the things I think a lot about is that old rule. You know, when you're a kid and you're learning and you have three notes in band that are the same, and the conductor says, you never play three notes the same in a row. You must do something different on each one. Stupid rule, but also kind of makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's so juvenile and so kind of simplistic, but it does make sense. Here, he's chosen to repeat that B flat. Do something special with the second one, I think. Again, just my taste. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go from that moment. Just try something and do something funky on the B flat and see what happens. Go from like 18, something like that. Yeah, good. Very good. Now, I would say to you as well, a general rule for your approach to this music is to soften the articulation a little bit. It's very precise and very crisp, and I think that would sound beautiful in a lot of music. But remember the flute that we were playing on, we would be playing on in this time. First of all, it would not be made of metal, it would be made of wood. It would have no buttons on it. Maybe it'd have one down on the D sharp key, depending where you're from. No lip plate, no riser, none of this stuff. There was a softer attack, and the composer would have written the music with this in mind. So rather than hearing, I think it would have been more. Does that make sense? Yeah, you can still have some separation, but not or I actually have to tell you a secret. I'm not tonguing them. I'm going pa pa pa. I do this articulation a lot in this music. I just remove the tongue. have you read the Quantz book? I know I'm so ashamed to be asking because how much of a geek do I sound right now? But have you read it or come across it before?
No, I haven't.
Honestly, it sounds so boring. It is not boring. It's really interesting. And there's an amazing chapter on articulation. The articulation chapter is the kind of craziest one for me because he talks about how they tongue back then, and they do not go t t t t t t t t t. I mean, they do, but not like that's all we do. We basically go t t t t t ticka 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 ticka, and that's it. That's about as much as we do. They have hundreds and hundreds of articulations, often things like teary 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 or tilla tilla tilla, and all this kind of stuff. And it's fascinating because at first it's like, how do you do teary teary teary? But then you practice it and you figure it out. Teary, 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 teary. And it changes the flow of all the music. Think to how we play the Badineri. They would not have done that. Ta 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 ta. It would have been a completely different piece of music. Or, even more so, how often do we hear people playing this like it's a virtuoso showpiece? I'm almost 100% certain Bach intended it to be much slower, much softer in the articulation. That would certainly solve the breathing issues. We all say, was Bach crazy? How did he expect flute players to play this? Well, we know he wasn't crazy. We know he was an absolute genius. In fact, the output of Bach. Do you know about how much music he wrote? This fact blew my mind. If someone was to sit and just copy note for note every piece that Bach ever wrote, one after the other, it would take them nearly 90 years. Bach only lived until he was, what, 60 or something? How did he write all this music? And he wasn't copying, he was actually writing it from, like he had to think. But he must have been knocking these things out quicker than we could even copy it. He was an absolute genius. So I would argue and say Bach was not crazy, and he did not write the partita ignoring the flute's capabilities of breathing. He knew exactly what he was doing. It's us that play it completely incorrectly. So something to bear in mind. I'm talking far too much. Play for me from the beginning with this slightly softer, more elongated articulation. Doesn't mean precision is not there. It just means we don't have any bluntness. Does that make sense, Brittany?
Yeah.
Yeah, try for me. Oh, beautiful. Now, something else. Honestly, it sounds so good. It sounds so fantastic. One thing I find very peculiar about this sonata is the third beat. Because it's for those who can't see it, it's 30-second notes. I think you call it 30-second and 16 notes. It's a very peculiar rhythm. It's not peculiar, it just feels weird. Even looking at it on the page, it's not what you would expect with the music. And I think you need to show that just a little more. So rather than but what about yeah? It's unusual. Let it sound unusual. Very nice, very nice. Now, I mean, there's not much I've changed at all. The first note, I would maybe change a little bit, so rather than, and again, just my taste, because Bach wrote no articulation in here, but what the majority of people do, including me and including Brittany, is we tongue the first note and slur the next three. It makes more sense harmonically. So rather than having, I wonder about dum. Look at singer. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I love that. I love that. What I would also say, and this is just kind of an offshoot, when you think of the articulation like this and the slur and the phrase, the vibrato takes care of itself. you played with almost none because the music was not in the vibrato. We as modern players are, oh, everything is in the vibrato. It's not here, and you don't need it, and you didn't play it, and it just sounded perfect and elegant, and it makes me want to go play this piece. Oh, I can't wait for my Bach concert. Play it one more time, going on this time. Same again? I mean, the next bit, same way? Very good. Brittany, what about something like this? Yeah, long notes, massive opportunity for ornamentation. Very good. Now, what's the rule of the trill? What is the rule for trilling in early music?
Oh, you start drilling for the
Upper note. Yeah, you
Yes,
start
okay.
trilling the ends. Yeah, so make sure you do that. You trilled from the lower note. Also, you see in the first measure where you gave the first note a little magic. Boom, be-da. I think same magic here. Boom, ba-da-da, boom, ba-da-da. Upper note, trill, and resolve.
I'm sorry.
That's good. Yes, great. And let's take this special first note and carry it forward into even the next bit. Yada-dum-bum. It's like two people having a conversation. Let's go home, please. But I want another drink. Let's go home, please. You know what I mean? It's two people kind of loving each other but also arguing at the same time. Is there a way? I can really see you're trying to do what I'm asking, but for me, there's too much weight on the tongue notes. Boom, 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 boom. So rather than playing like a grand piano, like a Steinway, you're on a harp. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that's it. That's it. How beautiful does that sound? Gosh, you guys are really quick learners. I would spend like weeks with some of my students trying to get them to play like this. Oh, I hope they don't hear me say that. But honestly, for me, like when you play Bach right, and I don't mean there's a right and a wrong way, but when you play Bach right, it's because it moves people. It's not academic. I know there's rules and we worry about analyzing, but it's really beautiful. And if you think you're playing this here, and I'm being moved, and we don't even have the harpsichord playing, and I'd say the same for Deborah. Like when people play it in a way that's special, then we know we've hit the jackpot. Does that make sense? What I've said to all the things we've spoken about, Brittany?
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Thank you. So again, same thing. Go away. Be confident in the decisions, but make them. Don't like just play what comes out. Really think about every measure, every note. How do you want it to be? How do you want it to make someone feel? And then you can't go wrong with this music. Thank you so much for playing for us. It was really lovely to hear you. Cheryl, we're coming to you if you're there.
Yes, I am here. Hold on.
Fantastic. Your camera's off. Are you going to pop your camera on for us? Oh, I just realized Deborah still pinned to the thing. I'm so sorry. Hang on. There's some people in the waiting room. I'm just letting them in. I'm just going to unpin Deborah.
I think Stephen.
Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm just going to remove the pin. There we
And
go.
Stephen, when you hit pin, it'll pin it just for you, but then there should be another one that says something like highlight, which would highlight it for everybody
Oh,
else.
that's why you said highlight. I am so sorry.
Oh,
Spotlight
no, you're
for
good.
everyone.
Spotlight, there it is.
I am
There, Cheryl.
So sorry. I just was seeing Deborah all the time and then looking at Brittany in this tiny box, and then it just occurred to me that it was something. But at least I did it wrong, and not everyone was affected. Great. How are you, Cheryl?
I'm good. How about
Lovely
you?
to meet you. Cheryl and I have met virtually before through the Galway Flute Festival where I
Yes.
work.
Yes.
Lovely to see you. Which Bach sonata are you going to play for us?
Okay. Well, I have some of number 5, second and third movements.
Great. Should we do the slow movement because it's everyone's favorite?
Oh, yes. Sure. Okay. We're ready?
So this is for everyone listening. This is the E minor sonata. Let's go for it, Cheryl.
Okay.
Oh, Cheryl, I think you need to switch your original sound. We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me. Gosh, I don't know about that. I am so sorry.
That's all right. If you need any help finding it, let me know. I know you're using a different program from us, probably.
Yes, I'm not sure how to get to it. That's the problem.
Well, for me, it's in the top left of my screen.
What tab is it in?
Do you have the preferences tab? If you go under the preferences tab, there's an
Let me
audio
go
button.
to the other computer.
Okay, yeah, take your time. No problem at all.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you want to go to somebody else, we'll get me going in a minute.
Yeah, no problem. You're actually the last person, but we'll have a little chat.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a problem.
Let me go to the other computer.
That's good. For those of you who don't know Cheryl, Cheryl has some sight issues, so she uses special programs for that, which is amazing. I think she learns all her music from memory as well. I'm not sure. We'll need to ask her, but it's incredible. So she'll find the button in a different way. Do you guys want to ask me anything about interpreting this music at the moment? Anything I've said that you disagree? Anything I've said you want me to elaborate on? Anybody? Nobody at all?
And then Stephen, I've got your video ready if you want to give me co-host ability, and then I'll share
I'd
it.
love to do that. Let me just see how I do that. Do you know how I do that, Mark?
If you right click on my face, it
that
should
makes
say
it
something
better.
like make co-host.
Oh, yes, there we go. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna make you. Can I make you host? Yeah, I'm just gonna make you host. But for now, that's fine.
Sweet.
Change host. Okay, so let's listen. And now I'm a bit nervous about listening to my Bach, having me told everyone how to do it, because I bet I don't do all the same stuff. But let's give it a go. So the movement I chose, hopefully this will work, is just the little finale to the C major flute sonata. For those of you, the C major sonata is one that no one plays that much. I love it. And I think they don't play it because of how it finishes. Because rather than having this virtuosic ending, it finishes with this weirdly beautiful little set of minuets. Very gentle, very easy, very elegant. Great way to start learning how to play this stuff and experimenting with color and tempo and lack of vibrato and phrasing and ornamentation. So I popped the sheet music on the bottom, which is the original with the figured bass, so you won't see any accompaniment, you'll just see the numbers scrolling by. But you'll see how at some point I add little bits of embellishment, and especially on repeats and stuff like that. So it's just a little way to kind of understand it. It's from a live concert, so I'm sure it's not perfect, but we'll give it a go.
All right, you ready? Here we go.
full.
So I was listening to it, it's like, am I preaching? Am I playing what I preach? Yeah, I think I am actually, thank goodness for that. You know, like in terms of length of notes, in terms of phrasing, in terms of vibrato, just bringing it in a little bit here and there, especially on repeats, and then expanding the space, you know, between notes, filling it with a few extras, especially in repeats. So if you're looking to kind of privately experiment with this, go for that movement. The final two minuets of the C major, the fourth sonata. The first and second are and the third are quite difficult of that sonata, but weirdly it finishes with this incredibly elegant little movement. We're not certain Bach wrote this one. I don't know, is the truth. The only ones we are certain about, actually, it's funny because I have all these editions here, and one of them is the Authentic Sonatas, it's called. Yeah, the three sonatas authentically attributed or something, which would be E minor, E major, and B minor. So that's 1, 5, and 6. They're the only ones that we really are pretty confident in knowing that Bach wrote. The rest we don't know for sure. So, yeah, it's a good way to start is the minuets of the fourth movement. Okay, Cheryl, we are here and ready for you. Can you hear me, Cheryl? Calling Cheryl. Oh, I can see she's unmuted. Oh no, Cheryl, are you there? I can see you. Oh, hang on, Yvonne's asking a question. Stephen, were you using the articulation P as you described in another class? Yes, that's exactly what I was doing. I wouldn't spell it P-U-H, I would spell it P-E, like P. So rather than going, I go, shameless plug. I promise you it's not a plug. I have a book, as some of you might know, called The Flute Gym, and I think it's chapter 4, called Focus. It's all about this articulation, essentially. It's an articulation I use a lot, not just in playing, but in really as an exercise to focus in the sound. So it's very useful, you know, and things like, I mean, I was just playing Beethoven 6 last week. I always talk about this as an example. The first entry of the flutes, everyone goes, which is really not, I think, very appropriate for that piece. Am I having to work hard with the lips to get it? Absolutely. What's the shame in working hard to get a great effect? What it gives me is not just a focused, clean sound and a more subtle attack, but absolute control over the focus of the airstream, because you have to be very small and very angled correctly to get it to work. And then you kind of, the world is yours because suddenly you can control the sound more and you can control the articulation more, all by practicing P. There are some flute players out there who completely disagree with me and think I'm nuts. I speak about P a lot. And they can think that. I can only speak from my experiences as a player. What I can tell you is that when you have to walk on stage 250 nights a year and play concerts, some nights are a struggle. So I do what I think gives the audience the best experience of the music that I want to play for them, rather than doing what the textbook told me necessarily. If that makes any sense. Cheryl, let me try and unmute you and see if this works. Oh, I can't. Mark is the host. He has to do it now.
All right, make me smarter. I'm clicking ask to unmute. Is there another way?
Oh, that's in the chat. Sorry, everybody. Bear with us. I know we're running out of time already.
Could you hear me, Stephen? I'm trying
Oh,
to
yeah, I
unmute.
can hear you, Mark. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm trying to unmute Cheryl. The only option I have is request to unmute. So I think it sends her
Yeah,
little message.
sometimes there's some issues with Cheryl's software because I think it's slightly different to us, but I appreciate her being here to do that. And if not, we can pop her in the next class maybe. I know we're a little bit over already. Cheryl, that's what we might do if that's okay with you. Can we carry you over to the next one so we can have all the equipment sorted by then? Because I don't think this one will work today. I don't even know if she can hear us. I guess she can. Can everybody else hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're kind of running out of time. Anyway, do you guys want to ask anything else before we wrap this up? It doesn't have to be about Bach, but ideally about Bach. When is the next class? Cheryl, we haven't 100% confirmed it yet, but what I will do is as soon as I speak to Mark and Matthew at Flute World, I will let you know personally, because I know that we have, I think we're Facebook friends as well. When is my all Bach performance? I think it is April 25th, if I remember right. Hang on, I will tell you. In Germany, unfortunately, not in America. I have got a couple of concerts that I'm playing Bach in. I think I might be doing it at the Mid-South Flute Festival, which is on the 24th, the day before, I think. I forget. On Thursday next week, I don't think we're playing Bach in that recital. I forget. I need to check. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I've only ever played the entire 7 sonatas twice before in one go. I think I played them all before. Actually, I've never played the A major ever in public, but I've played all of the others in public before. Number 7 is the G minor one. If anyone's looking for a kind of straightforward one, the G minor one is a good one to start with. Although I think it has a very, very difficult slow movement because it's all in pianissimo E flat, so it tends to go very, very flat, and we have to work very hard to keep the pitch up. But it's a great one, and just in terms of ensemble, if you're working with a keyboard player who doesn't want to spend too much time practicing, that's a great one to have a look at as well. The most difficult one, I would say, musically and technically, not a problem at all, Cheryl. Do not apologize. It's really not an issue. It's my fault for running over as well. The most difficult one is probably the B minor. The B minor or the E minor, but for different reasons. The B minor is complicated musically, I think, and I have to really make a musical plan of what I want to do, especially in the first movement, to get it to work. And it's long, and the stamina is tricky. In terms of technical stuff, the E minor can be a little tricky in the first and last movements. And I have seen a couple of situations where someone has lost a bit, like, just jumped a bar, or missed a beat, and they can't get back in with the keyboard player. And that always makes me very, very nervous. So it's worth really practicing as much as you can with the accompanist. I know we're not allowed to say that word, sorry, the collaborative keyboard player, and when it comes to doing that sonata. In terms of the more straightforward ones, E flat major definitely is a more straightforward one. E minor, I think, is fairly straightforward. A major is one that doesn't get played very much because we think it's incomplete. And I have 2 versions of it here, one that didn't even have a third movement in it. So you have to kind of choose your edition carefully with that. And the G minor sonata is probably not by Bach. We know that. Probably his son CPE. But hey, we don't have to tell everybody that. So we have this amazing collection of pieces, and we're very lucky to have them. And I think we are hitting a point in the world where we're not playing them as much as we used to, and I think that is a shame. I absolutely think it's important to be playing other things, and especially pieces of now, modern pieces and pieces of old that maybe didn't get played as much as they should have for various reasons. But to ignore Bach for me is a crime, because this is the essence of everything that we do. We only have Beethoven because we had Bach. We only have Mahler because we had Beethoven. We only have modern composers because we had Mahler, and so on and so forth. So play it, enjoy it, have a great time with it. It's been lovely to work with some of you guys and meet you all. Next class is all about French repertoire, one of my favorite topics. I love playing French repertoire. It's pretty much the foundation of what we do. So I'd love to see some of you guys at that one, and it's an open class again. As long as it's by a French composer, we can work on it. So have a great weekend, and I'll see you all soon. There is no date chosen yet. I see someone already. This is the same date that we'll discuss with you, Cheryl. I need to talk to Flute World about it. We usually do it about a month in advance. So as soon as we have a conversation about it, I'll let you all know. Great. Anything from you, Mark?
No, just thank you so much, Stephen. And a couple people were asking, well, how can we get Stephen's book? I put that link in the chat for you, along with the Quantz book. But genuinely, thank you so much, Stephen. Your performance is beautiful. It will be posted on the Flute World social sites in about an hour.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do at Flute World. We appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.